Incroyable. Le Sénat américain demande une enquête criminelle sur Goldman Sachs. Oui, je vais regarder. J'étais stupéfait. Goldman Sachs, une banque si prestigieuse qui influence les financiers du monde entier.
The once untouchable financial firm is now on the receiving end of a subpoena from the Manhattan DA's office. The subpoena seeks information related to the recent report by the U.S. Senate on the firm's dealings before and after and during the financial crisis.
C'est l'énorme rapport du Sénat américain accusant Goldman Sachs qui a déclenché l'enquête du procureur. Ils sont 35 000 dans 32 pays à travailler pour Goldman Sachs. Et leur siège est ici, à New York, et j'étais impatient de voir à quoi cela ressemblait. Pas un nom, pas une plaque, pas un signe, comme une société secrète. Les employés et même les anciens sont tenus au secret. Officiellement, Goldman Sachs est une banque d'affaires. Mais quel genre d'affaires? Depuis 2008, une foule d'articles de journaux accusent cette banque de s'être enrichie pendant la crise qu'elle a contribué à fabriquer. On les accuse aussi de trahir leurs clients et de manipuler le prix de tout ce qui se négocie sur la planète. Qu'y a-t-il de vrai dans ces accusations? À qui peuvent-elles profiter? Cette banque est-elle réellement plus puissante que les gouvernements? Il y a aussi de nombreux livres qui décrivent comment, en 30 ans, la banque a acquis cet immense pouvoir. Voici ceux que nous allons rencontrer. Ils sont sénateurs, écrivains, financiers, journalistes, banquiers et ont eu l'amabilité de nous éclairer. J'ai écrit au président de Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Bernstein, pour obtenir un entretien. En attendant sa réponse, je lis Business Insider, un site sur Internet. Au moins 2 fois par semaine, ils écrivent des articles sur Goldman Sachs. L'une des journalistes est Katia Wachtel. Elle vient d'Australie. Je n'ai vu qu'une petite photo d'elle, mais cela devrait suffire pour la reconnaître. C'est gênant pour elle d'être filmée au bureau et nous allons dans un petit restaurant. J'espère que ça ne sera pas trop bruyant. How many articles did you write?
50 to 100 articles about Goldman Sachs, and I update them constantly, so it could be more than that, but I think it's about that many. They're the bank that everybody wants to know about. They're the bank that everybody wants to read about. So
how come?
I think it's because they're the best at the moment, although that's also up for debate. But over the past decade, at least, they have been the #1 bank. And I think that when you're #1, people are interested. There's something about the power. It's sexier. So the man on the street can't understand why Goldman would sell a product and then hedge against it. But if you're in the banking world, if you're in finance, it's totally normal. Just because something is, we feel ethically wrong, or we can't understand why anyone could do that, doesn't mean that within that industry, amongst the people who know, it's common, it's what they do. Goldman Sachs is certainly guilty of something, but I don't believe for a second that they're more guilty than other banks. I think that they're a scapegoat often, and that annoys me because I think that people don't delve into the activities of other banks as much. I think people are less willing to look at the activities of other executives or employees at those banks, and I think there's a reason Goldman's looked at. I just think that a lot of the time it's unfair, and if you went into the back offices of those other banks, it would look really ugly too. There's always a gap, I think, between moral and legal, and I think that that's something that the government and prosecutors are constantly trying to chase. and they're going to create a new law and they'll create new regulation. The banks are smart. The bankers are incredibly intelligent. They come from the best schools in the country. They know what they're doing. They'll get around it.
Tu as eu des nouvelles de Goldman?
Oui, le service de presse de Goldman vient d'appeler. Pas de rendez-vous avec le président, ni avec personne d'autre.
La première chose que l'on apprend lorsqu'on commence à travailler chez Goldman Sachs, c'est qu'on ne parle pas de Goldman Sachs. Je poursuis l'enquête avec John Cassidy, un journaliste du New Yorker qui suit l'activité de Wall Street depuis 20 ans. John Cassidy compare le secteur financier au monstre que Frankenstein avait fabriqué et qui lui avait échappé. Je lui ai demandé de m'expliquer ce qu'il avait appris en observant les banques d'affaires comme Goldman Sachs.
Well, it turns out banks weren't banks, were they? I mean, that's what we've discovered. You're thinking of a bank as somewhere where you put your money on deposit and they give you a low return, perhaps 1%, perhaps 2%. You go back at the end of a couple of years, you take the money out. That's what banks were for 200 years. The banks you're talking about today are not banks in that sense at all. They're largely sort of speculative machines. They take the money that you put in there, but that's only part of what they've got. They also raise money on their own behalf. They issue their own bonds to scale up their investments, and then they invest in all sorts of things. Banks also now gamble, i.e. speculate, on their own account. They've turned into what are called investment banks, Wall Street banks. So the big French banks, for example, the big German banks, they have a subsidiary inside them which to all intents and purposes is just the same as Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. It's a Wall Street investment bank stuck inside what is supposed to be an old-fashioned retail bank. People are particularly fascinated by Goldman because they're widely seen to be the sort of quintessential Wall Street firm. For 10, 20 years they've been seen as the #1 firm. They hire the smartest people. They make the biggest profits, highest returns on equity, as they say on Wall Street. And they also have this incredible record of producing people who go on to higher office. So they're very close to people in government, not just in the US, but in the UK and other parts of the world. So Goldman Sachs for 10 or 20 years has been a source of envy to other people in the financial industry, and also invariably they get involved in whatever the big story of the day is. Whenever there's a big blow-up, you look around, Goldman, not always, but usually is involved some way or another.
Depuis 80 ans, derrière chaque grande crise financière, on trouve toujours Goldman Sachs. Déjà en 1929, Goldman Sachs était à l'origine du krach boursier. Même Groucho Marx y avait perdu toutes ses économies. Aujourd'hui, Goldman stocke des milliers de tonnes d'aluminium et de zinc pour en faire monter les prix. Et d'après le Wall Street Journal, Goldman Sachs conseille à ses clients de parier sur l'écroulement financier de l'Europe. Tu as des nouvelles?
Oui, le service de presse de Goldman nous conseille de rencontrer Charles Ellis. Il a écrit un livre sur Goldman.
Charles Ellis est un stratège de la finance et un grand admirateur de Goldman Sachs avec qui il collabore depuis très longtemps. C'est le seul qui a accepté de défendre Goldman Sachs. Il a insisté pour nous recevoir au club des anciens de l'université de Yale. Sa femme est vice-présidente de cette université. C'est un genre de vieil hôtel avec une immense bibliothèque et un buffet délicieux. How come you love them so much?
I have a great deal of respect for the people. I've worked with them personally for nearly 40 years as a consultant. And when you're in a consulting work, as I was in, you meet with the people away from the clients, backstage, or back in the kitchen, where real truth gets told. And over and over and over again, I watched how they made decisions about things that they really had to do well, and how beautifully they built up a fabulously talented, wonderfully capable organization. Do I think they've always been perfect? Certainly not. Do I think they have made small mistakes? Almost every day. Do I think they've made big mistakes? Yes. Almost every 25 years they make another huge mistake. Are they really a terrific organization? Even so, yes. And would I be proud to have one of my children working there? Yes. And would I like it if I had gone to work there? Yes, I'd be very proud. It's amazing if you go back 10 years ago and you were to say anything negative about Goldman Sachs, people would shake their heads and say, you must be crazy. Everything about Goldman Sachs is just wonderful. Today, if you say anything good about Goldman Sachs, they shake their heads. They say, you must be crazy. I thought everything about Goldman Sachs was terrible. It's the same firm. Modest changes in size, yes. Some interesting changes in the business activities they do, yes. Some changes in some of the key people, of course. But is it basically the same firm? Absolutely.
Enfin, un ancien de Goldman Sachs vient d'accepter de nous rencontrer. Il a créé sur Internet un site qui s'appelle Naked Capitalism, le capitalisme mis à nu. C'est Yves Smith. En arrivant, surprise, Yves Smith est une femme.
Yes.
Connaissant bien le machisme des financiers, Suzanne Weber a pensé qu'elle serait plus crédible en prenant un nom masculin.
The big change in behavior started in the 1980s, although really the foundation was set in 1970. All the firms used to be partnerships. The New York Stock Exchange rules required the firms to be partnerships. And if you're a partnership in the United States, you can lose all your money. In general, corporate America was much more conservative and proper. I mean, even though there was still bad behavior, there was some notion there were limits to the bad behavior.
En 1999, révolution. Goldman Sachs a besoin d'argent et se vend par action à la bourse. Maintenant, les gestionnaires ne sont plus responsables personnellement si la banque perd de l'argent. C'est la raison profonde du changement de comportement. Et au même moment, les lois qui obligeaient les banques à une certaine prudence sont supprimées par le président Clinton. Avant, on appelait Goldman Sachs la tortue, tellement la banque était prudente. Aujourd'hui, on la traite de vampire.
What happened from the 1980s and much more in the 1990s was first in the 80s, the bond business grew to be much more important. And that continued into the 1990s. And it became much more important and much more profitable. Riskier too, but bigger and more profitable. The second is that the derivatives business grew up. And the derivatives business is very lightly regulated. And that started becoming a very big business in the 1990s. And so these two areas that were very profitable and where the regulations were very low, and suddenly were making a lot of money, meant that you had traders become more important. And traders are predators. I mean, traders will take whatever they can from somebody else. You know, they operate by a kind of rule of the jungle, that everybody out there is, you know, if somebody is foolish enough to buy something at a bad price, that's their problem. And so you have, as these people become more powerful in the firm, that mentality starts to drive the firm more than it used to. I mean, for example, at Goldman, the traders call the people on the investment banking side socialists because they get paid on a team basis. Everything is backwards. You know, finance is supposed to be about, you know, first thing, it's supposed to be a service business. It's supposed to support industry, and it's supposed to help the economy grow. And therefore, you know, they shouldn't take too much. You know, if they take too much, it's no longer a support, it's more like a parasite. But then now we have the second problem, that it's much more profitable to destroy rather than to make money, if you in the normal fashion.
Does Goldman Sachs have any influence of the United States government?
I think you'd be crazy to think that they didn't. The question is, how much more influence do they have than other players? There's good reason to think they have quite a lot. I mean, you obviously have all these famous names that have had very prominent government positions. Of course, you've got, you know, Bob Rubin and Hank Paulson being the most famous.
Robert Rubin, qui dirigeait Goldman Sachs, est devenu le ministre des Finances de Bill Clinton. Son successeur, Henry Paulson, a suivi le même trajet quand George W. Bush est devenu président. En 2008, Henry Paulson a organisé le plus grand sauvetage de banques jamais réalisé et a veillé à ce que Goldman Sachs en profite largement. À l'arrivée de Barack Obama, de nombreux dirigeants de Goldman entrent à la Maison-Blanche et au gouvernement. Et lorsque certains deviennent les gendarmes des marchés, ça revient à nommer un renard pour protéger le poulailler. Et en sens inverse, on voit des ministres, des procureurs devenir des employés de Goldman Sachs. Leur état d'esprit s'étend sur la planète tout entière. Ils sont des centaines à occuper des postes clés. Le gouverneur de la Banque du Canada, le ministre du Commerce du Nigeria, un des dirigeants de la Banque d'Angleterre, tous viennent de Goldman. Et le nouveau président de la Banque Centrale Européenne, Mario Draghi, est lui un ancien vice-président de Goldman Sachs Europe. Je viens d'apprendre qu'un groupe va essayer de manifester à l'intérieur d'une banque. Une banque qui fait de jolis bénéfices et ne paie pas d'impôts. La seule télévision présente, c'est la télévision russe. Les Russes adorent quand il y a un problème en Amérique.
People are dying all over America and all over the world because of these financial institutions. They are making billions from the wars. Feed the poor, not the war. That's great.
J'aimerais rencontrer les journalistes du New York Times qui, les premières, ont averti des fraudes de Goldman Sachs. Gretchen Morgenson termine d'écrire un livre, mais Louise Story accepte de nous rencontrer. C'est grâce, ou à cause, de ces deux journalistes que Goldman Sachs a été condamné en 2010 à payer une amende de 550 millions de dollars pour avoir abusé ses clients. Et aussitôt, l'action de Goldman Sachs a baissé de 15%.
How do you feel when Goldman Sachs says that their share might go down because of you and other journalists?
Goldman shares do not go down because of journalists or stories or articles. They go down because of things that Goldman does or because of things that the government does. What we do is we tell the stories and we look for the facts. When the financial markets ran into grave trouble, there wasn't enough money for everyone. And what you saw at Goldman as well as some other banks is you saw them make some decisions that benefited Goldman but did not benefit their clients. And it occurred in all different sorts of ways. So one way that it occurred was with a hospital in Pittsburgh. And that hospital had bought something called auction rate securities from Goldman. And these are basically short-term investments that are supposed to roll over in auctions all the time. But that market dried up at the beginning of 2008, and Goldman was actually the first bank to pull out, helping it to dry up. But one of its customers was a hospital in Pittsburgh, and that hospital had asked Goldman months before, should we leave this market? And Goldman said to stay. And then when the market dried up, that customer alone was left to bear the loss. At the same time that Goldman was marking down these mortgage bonds, Goldman had its own position, its own negative bet on the mortgage market. Its customers did not know that Goldman was not a neutral broker. The more it marked its customers down, the more that short negative bet benefited Goldman. At the end of 2006, they had a big long position, which means Goldman was betting on the future of the housing market. And in the beginning of 2007, it was very hard to get rid of all of that position. They got rid of a lot, but they could not get rid of all. And so what they did was they built what they called the Big Short, which was a big negative bet that helped offset a lot of that long. And in 2007, it led to a substantial profit for Goldman. Now, Goldman would point to some losses in 2008, but I've been told by a lot of my sources that then they made profits on it in 2009, and they won't release those numbers. But the bottom line is Goldman had a big short. Other banks did not have the big short. Other banks spiraled and suffered and bled, but Goldman survived strong and much better because of this negative bet that they put in place even while their customers suffered.
Je voulais aussi lui parler d'AIG, la plus grosse société d'assurance du monde qui avait fait faillite. Quel était le rôle de Goldman Sachs? Est-ce que Louise le savait?
To me, every story I read...
AIG a l'air d'avoir été une marionnette manipulée par Goldman Sachs.
Well, AIG got itself into all these very complex insurance deals with a lot of big banks, including Goldman Sachs. And what AIG gave them was insurance policies, essentially, that said, if those mortgage securities decrease in value, we, AIG, will pay you. Just like, you know, if your house burns down, the insurance company might pay for it. So these were insurance policies on financial instruments. And what happened, of course, is the mortgage securities did collapse. And as they collapsed, Goldman was the first and foremost to demand all this cash from AIG. It was saying, give us more money, give us more money. These are going down in value. Remember, at the same time, Goldman had its big short on. So Goldman profited on its short. It demanded cash from AIG. The market did go down. And all of that cash drained the life out of AIG. And that's why in the fall of 2008, the federal government had to bail out AIG. The only thing is, at the time in 2008, it was kept a secret that all that money went to the banks. It only came out later that this had been sort of a backdoor bailout to the banks through AIG.
And in fact, if Goldman was really so smart, they should have realized that hurting AIG really was going to be very destructive, and it was also going to hurt all the other banks, which would in the end hurt them. You know, how could they be so short-sighted, if they're so smart, as to not understand that trying to, you know, if you're on a sinking boat, everybody's going to sink. And even if you think what you're doing is going to save yourself, what they did basically made the boat sink even faster.
Revenons au Paris, sur l'effondrement du marché immobilier. Le scandale était si énorme que les représentants de Goldman Sachs ont été convoqués au Sénat. Edward Kaufman faisait partie de la commission qui a interrogé publiquement les banquiers. Il est l'un des rares sénateurs à ne pas avoir pris l'argent de Goldman Sachs pour financer sa campagne électorale. Aujourd'hui, il est choqué qu'aucun banquier ne soit allé en prison.
We had Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, a number of the top people in Goldman Sachs came and testified and told a very hard-to-believe story.
That wasn't an indication you want to get out of that business?
When you tell me get out of the business, Senator, I don't know if I don't know what exactly.
But you see, it's hard for the American people to believe that people this smart really never kind of decided that this thing was going south in a big way.
Senator, I heard your earlier remarks as well. I think we're not that smart.
Never once he said Goldman Sachs decided and announced and put together an investment strategy based on the fact that the housing market was failing. If they can be selling an investment to someone and saying this is a great investment, at the same time selling a derivative that will protect them, it's insurance against it. It's like me selling you a car, saying it was great, and as it goes out the door, I'm buying insurance that the car is going to crash because I know the brakes are no good on the car. They haven't put a case together against Goldman Sachs, any more cases, and the fact that not a single person is going to jail is a total complete, frankly, is very, very, very disheartening and discouraging. And so far, we've seen a trend that the regulators are ruling more and more in favor of the big banks, not ruling in favor of just the common person, the regular person, and the investor. And by the way, some of these investors that are getting hurt by this are very rich people. This is not just rich versus poor. Many of the people that are suffering from the high-frequency trading are suffering from the naked short selling, they cover the whole gamut of investors in the United States. So it isn't just the rich versus the poor. It basically is the big banks versus everybody else. One of the things that happened in the United States was after September 11th, we moved a whole lot of our FBI agents off of financial fraud into terrorism, which we should have done. It was the right thing to do. But we should have filled in those FBI spots, and we didn't. Well, self-regulation doesn't work. It doesn't work in the financial industry. It doesn't work on the streets. You can't. It doesn't work in sports. Can you imagine in a sporting event if you said, look, you know, the referees are getting in the way. They keep slowing down the game. They're blowing their whistles. What we need to do is we need to get rid of all the referees. Can you imagine what would happen in a football game if, in fact, you put all the referees off the field? I mean, I wouldn't want to be in the middle of that field about 5 minutes into that game. And essentially, that's their argument. The same with the police in the streets. Clearly, what concerns me is that these engineers are putting together machines, computers that operate at such an incredible high rate of speed, and we really have no idea. We have no idea. You hear me? No idea what's going on in these markets because they are trading at such a high rate of speed, and we cannot monitor those speeds. Neither the CFTC nor the Securities Exchange Commission of the United States have the capability to determine what's going on in terms of these high-frequency trading. That is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly dangerous.
Seuls 20% des échanges sont traités par la bourse de New York, qui va fermer dans quelques années. Aujourd'hui, la plupart des transactions sont effectuées en dehors du contrôle des bourses, directement entre les ordinateurs d'une banque à l'autre, en toute discrétion, à la vitesse de la lumière. Et quand le prix du blé, du café, du soja, du pétrole double ou triple, ce n'est plus sous l'effet de l'offre et de la demande, mais parce que Goldman Sachs et ses concurrents utilisent des rumeurs, ou les fabriquent, pour gagner leur pari sur la hausse ou la baisse des prix. Aujourd'hui, Goldman Sachs reçoit ses actionnaires. L'assemblée a lieu dans l'autre tour, celle du New Jersey, de l'autre côté de la rivière Hudson. Plusieurs actionnaires disent que c'est pour les décourager d'y assister. Un garde a menacé de me faire arrêter par la police si je m'approchais, et même certains actionnaires ne sont pas bienvenus.
The Jersey City Police, where this meeting is taking place, called our organization and said that our names were on a list that had been given to them by Goldman Sachs as potential troublemakers at their annual meeting.
Goldman Sachs, pay your tax. Don't bounce budget on the people's backs. Goldman Sachs, pay your tax. Don't bounce budget on the people's backs. Goldman Sachs, pay your tax. Don't bounce budget on the people's backs.
À la sortie, nous rencontrons une des actionnaires qui gère l'argent de nombreuses communautés religieuses.
Goldman Sachs executives are among the richest people in the world, and there are 1 billion plus people in the world at the bottom of the pyramid, which means they are suffering from poverty and mainly food insecurity. And because Goldman Sachs is at the heart of the financial, economic, and speculative communities, we believe that that is truly affecting our global community in a way that is not sustainable. So we are looking that executive compensation can be seriously addressed and our global community can become more sustainable.
Je comprends qu'elle soit déçue. En 2010, le bénéfice de Goldman Sachs a diminué de 37%, pendant que le salaire des 5 premiers dirigeants était multiplié par 3. Il existe sur Internet un site qui signale les articles et les émissions de télévision critiques à l'encontre de Goldman Sachs. Je me demandais qui s'en occupait et j'ai décidé d'aller en Floride pour faire la connaissance de Larry Rubinoff. Larry a dirigé une agence de crédit immobilier pendant 20 ans, jusqu'à l'écroulement du marché. Aujourd'hui, il s'occupe activement de mettre à jour ce site. Goldman Sachs a tenté de le faire interdire, mais la justice a décidé que, puisque Larry n'en tire aucun profit financier, il est libre de continuer.
My hair's okay?
A little is missing. What is your motivation?
My involvement stems from my anger of what the banking system did to create the economic crisis, the global economic crisis, hurting literally millions and millions of people, primarily middle-class people. Purely out of greed, they motivated themselves to take advantage of little people.
Goldman Sachs, did they suffer from this subprime problem?
Goldman Sachs didn't suffer at all. Goldman Sachs has had its best years since the mortgage meltdown and since the worldwide economic crisis. Goldman Sachs has come out on top. They knew the mortgages would fail. They never told anyone. They were very instrumental in this crisis that the entire world has gone through. They paid rating agencies to give false ratings on these issues that led investors to believe they were safe. Countries and entire nations, municipalities, unions, they duped everyone.
After the very last Wall Street reform, do you expect some benefit?
Absolutely none. Business is going on in Wall Street and with the banks as usual. Derivatives are still being sold and traded. Mortgage-backed securities are still being created and sold and traded. We just don't know what ratings are put on them. But they're doing as much now, if not more, than they were before. So I see absolutely no change.
How come our Western government are so weak?
It's perhaps that Goldman Sachs and other banks and financial institutions have a great deal of power over the government. It's not that the government is so weak. It's possibly that those that control our finances and our money are a little bit stronger. There was a quote by a gentleman that created the concept of the central banking system, what we know here in this country as the Federal Reserve System. His name was Mayer Rothschild. He said, "Let me control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." If you think about that, it's a very profound statement. If the banks and Goldman Sachs can control all the money, they can pretty much control the governments and the laws within those governments.
How come there are not more people revolting?
I think people, especially in this country, have a fear. They have a fear of retribution. They become sheep. They're being led to the slaughter, and they don't believe, they truly don't believe in their hearts that they can fight against these institutions.
Une surprise m'attendait à New York, mais aucune chaîne de télévision pour le raconter. 2 journalistes, c'est tout. Pourtant, il est rare de voir une manifestation à Wall Street même. 5 à 10 000 personnes sont venues très pacifiquement crier leur colère. Rien de précis à l'encontre de Goldman, mais juste contre les énormes banques en général et un concurrent de Goldman Sachs en particulier. On m'a parlé d'un député européen. Il est scandalisé depuis qu'il a découvert que les experts financiers qui conseillent la Commission européenne sont en réalité des lobbyistes payés par les grandes banques.
Goldman Sachs ne contribue en rien à faire en sorte que l'économie fonctionne mieux et au développement des entreprises. Au contraire, ils peuvent gagner énormément d'argent quand les choses vont mal. Bon. Donc tout leur savoir-faire, c'est de bien se positionner. Mais c'est aussi d'influencer les marchés, d'influencer les décideurs, d'influencer les lois pour que les paris qu'ils ont pris se réalisent. Et donc, quand vous avez, par exemple, la possibilité de parier à la baisse de la valeur d'une obligation grecque, si l'obligation grecque baisse, vous gagnez de l'argent. À ce moment-là, vous avez tout intérêt à avoir une sorte de campagne de presse qui dit « Ouh là là, la situation est catastrophique en Grèce, ça empire de jour en jour ». Et vous avez donc d'autres acteurs des marchés qui vont vendre. Et si les gens vendent, le prix baisse, et c'est à ce moment-là que Goldman Sachs gagne, puisque Goldman Sachs a juste parié sur l'évolution du prix. Ils ont besoin d'opacité, ils ont besoin des paradis fiscaux, ils ont besoin du secret bancaire, ils ont besoin que les règles qui encadrent les transactions financières ne soient pas transparentes. Donc tous ces produits qui se créent depuis 20 ans, ce qu'on appelle pudiquement l'innovation financière, c'est ça qui est le ressort de l'augmentation du risque.
Et alors, impudiquement, on devrait les appeler comment?
Impudiquement, on devrait les appeler des bombes à retardement, parce qu'on est en train de créer plus de risques que d'en supprimer. La finance, le lobbying des financiers, c'est de dire on prend en charge le risque, on couvre le risque, on hedge le risque, on arbitre le risque. La réalité, c'est le contraire. La réalité, c'est qu'ils créent plus de risques qu'ils n'en suppriment.
En sortant, j'apprends que Goldman Sachs est aussi poursuivi par la Réserve fédérale américaine. En 2009, une filiale de Goldman Sachs, Lytton Loan Servicing, a expulsé illégalement des milliers de familles. La Fed considère que Lytton Loan Servicing est coupable de négligence, de pratiques anormales et de comportements fautifs. Pendant des années, Jean-François Guéraud a dirigé des enquêtes contre la délinquance économique. Il vient de terminer un livre sur les crimes financiers. Je lui ai demandé de m'en expliquer le mécanisme.
Les banquiers qui distribuaient ces prêts subprime, donc dits prédateurs ou menteurs, savaient très bien que ces prêts, un jour ou l'autre, allaient étrangler littéralement les plus vulnérables de la société américaine. Il y a même une expression encore plus révélatrice et plus ignoble de la toxicité de ces prêts. Les financiers parlaient de prêts à neutrons, par référence à l'arme à neutrons. L'arme à neutrons, c'est une arme qui détruit les personnes, mais qui laisse en place les bâtiments. Donc ces prêts subprime allaient un jour ou l'autre, de manière très consciente et très volontaire, en quelque sorte détruire les ménages américains qui allaient être étranglés, mais laisser intactes des maisons qui pourraient être ensuite rachetées par les banques elles-mêmes. À partir des années 70 aux États-Unis, il y a eu un rééquilibrage ou un renversement de pouvoir entre le monde financier, qui est à New York, à Wall Street, et à Washington, là où il y a les institutions politiques. Petit à petit, la finance américaine a pris de plus en plus de poids dans le système américain et a commencé petit à petit à tenir en laisse le pouvoir politique.
Est-ce qu'il y a des gens au-dessus de Goldman Sachs? Est-ce qu'ils ont des comptes à rendre à quelqu'un?
On peut penser que l'impunité est criminogène. C'est-à-dire que l'impunité est une incitation permanente à commettre de nouveaux crimes. C'est vrai pour un voleur de banque et c'est vrai aussi pour un banquier voleur. Et c'est tout le problème du système américain. Comme il ne sanctionne pas réellement, il incite en permanence à des comportements au minimum douteux. Or, la dérégulation, au moins quand elle est pratiquée de manière très dogmatique, très fondamentaliste, elle est criminogène, c'est-à-dire qu'elle constitue une incitation permanente à des fraudes et elle crée de manière systématique des opportunités de fraude.
La déréglementation est une incitation permanente à la fraude. Qu'en pense une star du journalisme américain comme Dan Rather? Celui qui fut le présentateur vedette du journal de CBS pendant 24 ans continue d'animer des émissions d'information en toute indépendance. À 80 ans, il a toujours un énorme succès.
This is the tale of Olga Ooze. Denture paste gave her the blues. Yeah, until at last she found
This is what we have to understand about a company like Goldman Sachs and about Wall Street in general. It is gambling. It is a big casino. But, and this is very important, at the best casinos, you walk in the door, you know you're gambling. However, you have confidence that the casino will abide by the casino rules. No dealing from the bottom of the deck. No having cards up the sleeve. The roulette wheel is an honest roulette wheel. It's gambling, but if there's such a phrase as honest gambling, you know the rules, you know the risks, we know the dice were loaded, we know the roulette wheel was fixed. However, up to and including the time you and I are talking here, I think there's been only one really big Wall Street operator who's been brought to justice on criminal charges. Under our law and our regulations, they've been brought up under civil charges, so they pay a fine. The fine looks big in the paper. X firm pays $100 million. Chump change to these guys. As long as they can only suffer monetary losses, I fear they'll continue to do it. But if you start sending some to prison, and legitimately so, and our government, both Republican and Democratic now, our governments have a lot to answer for. It's inelegant to say so, but what's developed in the United States of America, not this country alone, but it has developed here, is that big government is in bed with very big business, very big corporations, huge international conglomerate corporations, including but not limited to banks. So they're in bed with one another. The big corporations make huge campaign contributions. Footnote, our last presidential campaign, when all is said and done, cost about $2 billion. That's with a B, $2 billion. So while some people give to political campaigns altruistically for the right reasons, by and large, the people who give the money to the politicians to run their election campaigns expect to get something.
Sont-ils les maîtres du monde? Non, ils sont juste les meilleurs composants d'un explosif assez puissant pour faire imploser le système. Pour évaluer ce danger mondial, il fallait trouver un homme qui ait suffisamment de recul. Ancien correspondant de guerre, lauréat du prix Pulitzer, Chris Hedges est l'un des rares intellectuels américains à manifester contre les dérives des grandes banques. Il y a quelques années, il a même démissionné du New York Times pour pouvoir mener plus librement ses enquêtes. Sa vision du monde s'étend bien au-delà de la finance.
What is specific about Goldman Sachs?
Because partners at Goldman Sachs are pushed out of the institution at a fairly young age. They gravitate into the political system. So there are a huge number of former partners and even heads of Goldman Sachs who have achieved direct political power, and really it is fair to say that it is impossible in this country to vote against the interests of Goldman Sachs.
How big is the power of Goldman Sachs?
Well, Goldman Sachs has the power to bring down economies, as they have in Greece. It's all about bond ratings. And when they declare a particular government insolvent, the consequences are drastic because they force the government, in order to continue to be able to borrow money, to impose the kind of austerity measures that have crippled Greek society and which are crippling the United States. We're all hostage to this game of speculation.
You have seen the Senate hearing. What do you think?
Political theater. As soon as the lights go out and the cameras leave, these people all go to lunch. Nobody achieves political power in this country without the backing of the financial sector. Since the collapse of 2008, it is that these institutions are untouchable. We can't do anything to stop them. They have looted the U.S. Treasury and are engaging in the same kind of speculation, casino capitalism that they engaged in before the bubble deflated, wiping out $17 trillion in wages and savings of small shareholders and ordinary Americans. You know, these people are criminals. In the 17th century, speculators were hung. And here, every single institution, from the press to universities, to the courts, to the legislative bodies, to the executive branch of government, dance to the tune that they play. And there's absolutely no way that ordinary citizens can fight back. There is no mechanism within the formal structures of power by which we can fight back. We live not in a democracy, but what the political philosopher Sheldon Whirlwind calls a system of inverted totalitarianism. And by that he means it's not classical totalitarianism. It doesn't revolve around a demagogue or a charismatic leader, but finds its expression in the anonymity of the corporate state. We're being destroyed financially, morally, politically, and economically. And the institutions that do it, and maybe the Crown institution that is doing it, is Goldman Sachs. They know no limits. They turn everything into a commodity that they exploit until exhaustion or collapse, which is why the environmental crisis is intimately twinned with the economic crisis. The death of the American empire is not a tragedy. It's probably a good thing. It's just how we're dying that is so frightening, because we're lashing out like a wounded animal. And, you know, empires, the tyranny empires impose abroad, they always bring home. They always impose at home. Thucydides and Plutarch wrote about that in ancient Athens. Athenian democracy was slaughtered by the Athenians, and we're doing exactly the same thing. Civilizations from Easter Island to the Ottoman Empire to the collapse of Imperial Russia, they always exhaust their own potential and their own resources. The danger is that this time it's global. We bring the whole planet down with us. There is nowhere left to migrate to.
Teemalauantai viettää peli-iltaa.
Siinä vaiheessa, kun mä menin näyttää mun paijalle, tässä on nyt pelijuoksusopimus. Paijallahan meinasi niinku leuka irrota. Siis onko tämä niinku ihan oikeata bisnestä?
It's not a matter of lying. It's a matter of building an image.
Kasetilla oleva ohjelma, mistä lähetään se radiokanavan kautta